Hi there, this is Marty from owingsart.com, and today I'm really excited to be taking an in-depth look at some of the paper products and sketchbooks from Hahnemühle. If you haven't heard of them in the United States, that's okay, but in Europe they're quite popular, and they've been making paper in a place called Dassel, Germany since 1584. For nearly half a millennium they've been producing great paper products out of a little mill right in the middle of Germany. They must be doing something right if they can last half a millennium, and today we'll try to find out what that something is. Today I'll try to tell you a little bit about Hahnemühle, the company. They have a long history, but I'll try to be brief. We'll talk about some paper terminology because I had to learn some things myself, hoping sharing those things with you will help you the next time you go to buy some paper. We'll take an in-depth look at their paper, sketchbooks, and their special edition postcards, and then some special offers, so you want to watch all the way to the end. Well, if you want to take a really deep dive into Hahnemühle's history, you can go to their website. It talks all about the history from the beginning right up to today. But basically, the paper has been continuously produced in Germany for the past 400 plus years. They have a workshop plant right in Dassel, and they crank out just a bunch of different paper products. But the important part, I think, for my purposes, is the quality they put into their paper. And again, not a very well-known household name in America or perhaps North America itself, but in the UK and in Europe, a very well-known and respected paper producer. And if you've seen this word and you've struggled with how exactly do I pronounce that, I'm going to help you out here. If you're in Germany, you want to say it like this: Hahnemühle, Hahnemühle, if you're in Germany. But if you're an American or you're in the UK, you'll probably say Hahnemühle, Hahnemühle. And they make all kinds of fine art papers, and one of the things they do is they produce papers in two really distinctly different ways. Most mass-produced papers today are produced on a machine called a Fourdrinier. Now, the Fourdrinier has been around since the early 1800s. It was invented by a Frenchman and later perfected by a couple of English brothers named Seeley and Henry Fourdrinier, and thus the name Fourdrinier. Anyway, the machines that are in modern factories still work on the same principle as the original Fourdrinier. In a nutshell, you have a vat of liquid cotton, you add some chemicals to it, and that is the paper maker's recipe. The liquid runs out onto these felt pads and goes through these series of heavy-duty rollers. What you have at the end of the process is paper. And depending on the recipe of the paper maker, that paper is going to be slightly different. There's a different machine, much like a Fourdrinier, but it runs about 2/3 slower. That's also going to produce what's called mold-made paper. We'll talk more about that in a minute. One question I get pretty often is, what is the difference between a cold press and a hot press paper? Well, very simply, a cold press paper is going to have peaks and ridges and valleys and a little bit of a tooth to it. You're going to feel that texture when you run your hand along the cold press paper. A hot press paper is going to be very smooth to the touch, almost like a Bristol or rubbing your hand on a very smooth countertop. That's really it. Basically, that's all it is. Now, the other question you get a lot is about paper sizing, and people often confuse this with the size of the paper itself. But it's not about the actual size of the paper or the measurement, how wide the paper is. It really comes down to cotton, its fibers, and the chemical composition of that cotton fiber when you add chemicals to it. There's two kinds of sizing: external sizing, which is basically like adding paint to a wall or treating the surface of the paper, and internal sizing, where you mix the chemicals with the cotton liquid in the vat right at the beginning, just like this, and then you get a paper that really resists absorption. Now, the paper towel on the right is paper that hasn't been sized, and you can see there's going to be feathering and bleeding and spidering in that, and it's going to be very absorbent, whilst the paper on the left has been properly sized, and it doesn't it's the opposite effect. Basically, there's no spidering, no feathering, and the paper works great. Now, I'm sure that a manufacturer has to strike a balance and find the right mixture and recipe for sizing paper to make it work right with all different kinds of mediums, and I think that's, after 425 years, Hahnemühle has done that. Now, why is sizing important? Sizing is important because it helps the fibers bond. And the stronger the fibers bond, the less of the absorption you have, as shown on the right on the paper towel, and the better and stronger the paper will be. Okay, well, time to take a look at some of the Hahnemühle papers. First, we start with the Cezanne paper. A 140-pound hot press paper. Remember, hot press is going to be smooth. This is also a mold-made paper. Mold-made papers are made on that second type of machine that runs about 2/3 slower than a forge Rainier, and really it allows the water to drain more slowly and the fibers to lay down with more overlap. Best I can tell from my research, this basically serves a couple of different purposes. It basically allows for stronger paper because it gives those fibers a chance to really bond, and it also allows the paper to return to flat after certain wet-on-wet applications. Today I plan to use a variety of different mediums to really test this paper well. I used ink, alcohol marker, graphite, watercolor, nib pens, colored pencils, all different kinds of medium, because that's what artists do. They may use mixed media. They may want this paper to do colored pencil work on because it's very excellent paper, and as you can see, colored pencil works just fine. I wanted to use a nib pen because oftentimes if you can find out a lot about paper by using a nib pen to see if the very fine lines have any bleeding or feathering, and there was absolutely none here, which is a good sign and the mark of a very quality made paper. Now here I'm just doing a variety of different ink washes, ink and line washes, and then I will do a graphite wash as well, because you always want to check that. I mean, a lot of people just like to draw with this paper. It's very fine paper, and absolutely a great application for that. One of the things I wanted to check as well after I let this dry was, did it bleed through? That's obviously an alcohol marker, which I made many layers from, so I was really pushing this paper, and you can see a little bleed through, but that's pretty normal, and most papers are just going to let that bleed right through in an alcohol marker. But you can also see some slight indentations where I put, that's a slight buckling where I laid the liquid on pretty heavy. Alright, same paper, Cezanne, but this time it's a cold press. So what you'll notice here is there's going to be a little bit more tooth in the paper. And I'll try again a variety of different medias on this very good watercolor paper, but I'm going to soak this. This time I'm just going to add a little bit more water to this. Again, it's 140-pound acid-free 100% cotton rag paper, and you want to look for that. If you want a really high quality paper that's going to last a long time, you want 100% cotton rag paper. Anything else, there's a higher cellulose count or wood pulp, things like that, which will deteriorate at a greater rate over time. And the reason cotton is preferred because it just holds up better over time. You can see here I'm doing a lot of ink washes. Here I had the wet on wet with the watercolor. Paper did great there. And of course I'll use graphite ink washes. I really like this paper for ink wash. And I don't notice the tooth isn't so pronounced that it's like painting in the mountains with peaks and valleys. It's just really nice. I'm going to add some graphite here in a second here, and then I'm going to try to erase it with a polymer eraser. So this is kind of a plastic eraser here. It's a Faber-Castell or a Stettler, I think, maybe. But it erases nicely as well. I mean, it's not perfect because it's got some peaks and valleys, some tooth in the paper. But you can see very nice washes here. Very nice effect with the watercolor. And I'm using Schmincke watercolor and just a variety of different types of inks here. I really like the way the media came out on this paper. It's not lumpy at all like you get with a very toothy paper. So this is a great cold press. Alright, the Leonardo. This is the heavy-duty 280-pound hot press paper, but it's also a mold-made paper. So it's going to be stronger in a lot of ways. Not only is it going to be thicker, but it's also going to be stronger because of that sizing I mentioned, and because it's mold-made. And again, I'm going to give this paper a good workout with a variety of different types of media. Again, with the alcohol marker up there, this is a J. Herbin ink I'm using in these pens, these water pens. You can also add ink to them. As long as it doesn't have shellac in it, it won't dry out your brush. So I use that from time to time. And this is watercolor. Again, this is the Schmincke. And you can see it just holds the media very well, and it should. This is a big, heavy duty paper that you shouldn't have to stretch, even with wet on wet technique. I'll show you a demonstration a little bit later when I put this paper through its paces, but basically it's super thick and really durable, and it withstands just a lot of abuse in terms of wet on wet or just mixed media in general. I mean, I'm imagining you could do acrylic, oil, wax, encaustic, whatever you wanted to do on this paper, and you'd probably be okay. Now here's a colored pencil, and what I wanted to do was I wanted to layer the colored pencil on here. I like the way this paper feels to the touch. I mean, it's almost like a Bristol. It's very smooth. Again, this is a hot press, but those layers just went down like silk, no problem. And the dip pen, doing some inking here, no bleeding whatsoever with this pen and paper. And here I'm using a Pentel ink marker and doing a little ink wash. Next is the turner. Now in this turner, I'm going back to a 140-pound cold press. It's a mold-made paper, and in this paper, I just tested watercolor because I wanted just at least one test to be strictly watercolor. And a friend of mine had sent me some watercolor paints from Germany called Jackson, and I wanted to just test those out, and I used this paper to do that test. And it turned out really quite good. Now the watercolors are excellent as well. That helped, but you can see here the color. It's not so toothy that it's really pronounced or noticeable. It's easy to work with. It's just really nice paper, and you can see the different colors here. They really burst on this nice natural white watercolor paper. And again, 100% cotton rag, and you can't beat that. Again, it's awesome acid-free paper. The longevity is going to be there. It's very fine watercolor papers. All these papers are, and for that matter, all different kinds of media. Well, here I did a little paper testing. So the first thing I wanted to do was really soak this paper and see how well it held up. Mainly what I was looking for here in this extreme example, and I mean, you're not going to normally do this with your artwork, but I gave this paper a really good 5-minute soaking. And what I was looking for was any buckling or warping or separation of the fibers or anything like that. And none of that happened. As a matter of fact, when I laid this out and came back later when everything was dry, the paper basically returned to its normal state. Now, cutting the paper from the blocks can be a little bit tricky. Took me a few tries to get used to it, but once I did, it was really a breeze. Now, I started out using a knife just to get the corner started a little bit, and then once you do that, and the heavier paper, you can just stick your finger in there and run it through, and it pops out pretty easy. A few thoughts on this paper. It is really well-made paper, and you can tell that the quality and craftsmanship has been put into this very fine German-made paper. They didn't cut corners here. It's well manufactured. It's very durable. It holds a whole different wide range of media. So whatever you want to do, from colored pencil to watercolor to ink washes, this paper is going to handle all that and more. I found the paper to be just excellent. I think this is a great investment. Although I saw some buckling in the 140-pound Cezanne, nothing out of the ordinary. And when I did the soak test, this paper returned back to its original state very quickly. So overall, a really excellent set of papers. Now let's look at some other things from Hahnemühle. Well, when the good folks over at Hahnemühle, and let me say Hahnemühle, sent me over the papers and the sketchbooks, they also sent me this tin of postcards. There's 30 postcards in here, and I just wanted to give them a test too. I mean, do what I would do in my normal sketching. So I took them out, I inspected them a bit. They looked good. They're all uniform. Seems to be high quality paper, and it comes in a very nice tin. And I drew a picture. Back in the spring, I received this 130-pound fine-grained Hahnemühle watercolor sketchbook. Now, these pages are both internally and externally sized, so this is very durable paper, and I got to spend the spring, summer, and early part of the autumn with this sketchbook. And showing you when I had it new here, but then I'm going to show you some of the drawings and creations I was able to do in this sketchbook starting back in the spring. Very nice texture paper, holds watercolor, ink washes, the pages fold nicely. They work great for panoramics. This was just an extra sheet that I had gotten as part of the package, and I decided to do a watercolor sketch on it. But you can see very high quality, nice pages, holds ink washes very well, drawings, no problem. I did a lot of lettering, inking and lettering in these books, no problem at all. Used both sides of the pages without any problem. Used the Faber-Castell Pitt markers in these. Absolutely awesome quality. Like I said, it accepts all kinds of media. Great binding and stitching in here. Just really high quality product. And Hahnemühle remembers the little things. The rubber band or the elastic band on it, it's very good quality, and the paper lays flat really nice, and that's what you like in a good watercolor sketchbook. A great place to go to find out more about Hahnemühle, the company, and what they produce and the different kinds of papers we discussed today, as well as a variety of their other products, is to go over their website. Then they get the lowdown on all the different sizes and manufacturing techniques and just everything you want to know about Hahnemühle paper. And this is a great section to learn all about the different properties of paper. It's called the Paper Quality Parameters section. Typical German name, but very interesting. Well, thanks for sticking around, and here is the special deal. If you go to Wet Paint right now, you're going to get 25% off any Hahnemühle watercolor sketchbook, Nostalgia sketchbook, or Gray sketchbook, and that's now through November 4th while supply lasts. So get over there quickly, order yours up at 25% off. You're talking about less than you'd spend for, say, a competitive, lesser quality sketchbook. So that's a really good deal from our friends over at Wet Paint. And that really cool deal is brought to you by the people at Hahnemühle, who work this out just for you guys to take advantage of. Please don't forget to tell them that I sent you over at Wet Paint. And if you can't find it there, well, I'd be highly skeptical. But if and in case you can't or they're sold out, go to DaVinciArtistSupply.com or ArtMaterialsOnline.com, and they'll both carry it and carry these discounts. Please remember also to tell them I sent you if you buy from them. And down in the description of the video, there will be links to all of these places, including any of the information I covered today. So just go down, check out the description, click on the link, and it'll take you to the appropriate spot. And if you get a chance, pop over to my website at owingsart.com, scroll down on the page, go to the right-hand side there, where the little squares of people are there, and join the group of people who are following me and my artistic journey on my website by clicking on the blue follow button. And about once a month, you'll get updated. I post about once a month. Lately, it's been less than that, but about once a month, and then you'll get an email saying, hey, Marty's added something to the website. Want to go over and take a look? And hopefully you'll find that interesting, inspiring, or at the very least, practical. Hey, while you're over at Wet Paint, my friends there wanted me to mention that Angela Benderka and Ron Stock from M. Graham are in their store doing special events and classes this week and next, I believe. And while they're doing that, there's a special going on. Buy 3, get 1 free, any M. Graham product. They're already 40% off, so that's a chance for you to score big on M. Graham. I know Steve from the Mind of Watercolors is going to take advantage of that because he loves M. Graham. Aha, you stuck around to the end, which means that you either really like me or you're trying to use my video to fall asleep. In either case, you just scored big because the first 3 people that go to my website at owingsart.com, click follow, and leave me a comment, you're going to get a box of watercolor postcards from Hahnemühle, courtesy of our friends from Hahnemühle. So I'll send you out a set post haste for the first 3 people that do that. And I want to give a shout out to Carol and Joe over at Hahnemühle for sending me this sweet swag and letting me check out their very high quality papers. There were no monies exchanged. They didn't pay me to do this review. I just want to bring high quality paper to my subscribers and help you guys find the best quality paper and art materials out there. So thanks to Joe and Carol for giving me the paper to check out. And one last thing, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. Leave me a comment. I love to hear from you guys. I always try to respond. And don't forget to just have a great day. If you have any questions about Hahnemühle, I'd love to be able to answer them or refer you over to the folks at Hahnemühle. Well, thanks for watching today. I hope you enjoyed the video. So long for now. This has been Marty for owingsart.com.
That's crazy.